In the dangerous situation of a mudslide outbreak, my childhood sweetheart instinctively protected the transfer student who was following us. As a result, I, who was beside him, was buried under the mud for a whole day and night. I thought I would never be able to let it go from then on. On a sunny day, Owen asked to see me again, looking distraught. He painfully explained, it was just an unconscious act and a moment of urgency at that time. It doesn't mean anything. He said, Poppy, Autumn is just a child from an ordinary family. She has nothing except her dreams, but you have so much more. You shouldn't let resentment fill the rest of your life. He said, Poppy, we can't deny our past just because of that one accident. I had heard these words thousands of times, but they couldn't stir up even the slightest ripple in my heart. At this moment, all I could think about was that taciturn and cautious boy who dug the mud off me with his bare hands and saved me. I wondered where he had gotten hurt again today. Some people say that I was born a princess. Besides coming from a wealthy family, I also have good looks and outstanding talents. My childhood sweetheart, who grew up with me, is also a gentle and elegant favored son of heaven. I knew clearly what chips I had and thought they would belong to me forever. The ignorance of youth put a transparent barrier between Owen and me. But I had never worried that we wouldn't be together in the future, and neither had Owen. It seemed that, it was just a matter of course that I liked walking home with him after school. It was our precious alone time every day. Blocking out the inquisitive glances from passers-by, the warm yellow streetlights and the fallen leaves on the ground all made me feel warm and relaxed. Hey, Owen. Today my teacher recommended me to participate in the preliminary dance competition of the National Youth Group half a month later. I bounced back to him again and asked for praise with a look on my face. Do you think I'm awesome? He laughed brightly. Awesome? And congratulations to our proud little princess for getting what she wanted. I frowned and stared at him resentfully, not satisfied with this nickname. I was indeed a bit showy when I was young and naive, but I became more low-key after growing up. However, I still couldn't escape this nickname that Owen had given me. Fortunately, he would still be considerate of my face in front of others and never say it out loud. This is our secret. Don't say this nickname in front of others. I emphasized again. Although I heard him say this embarrassing nickname again, I was still happy. After all, it was a national competition. The teacher said that with my talent, if I worked harder, there was a high probability that I would win a prize in this competition and could even be recommended to the university that I had dreamed of. The road was only so long and would always come to an end. Before going home, I grabbed his school bag and emphasized, Owen, I told you this news first. He turned his head. His eyes were clear. When they curved slightly, it was a really nice arc. He said, it's my great honor. My parents didn't seem to care about my dreams. They only hoped to provide me with a better life and make me a princess at the top of the ivory tower. Owen knew that. I smiled. Owen knew about my dreams. Sometimes I always felt that I was too lucky to have him accompany me in my life. But I was young at that time and didn't know that some things had an expiration date. The dance competition was held as scheduled half a month later. Owen sent me to the airport. This was the first competition that I participated in without his company. Our two families lived close to each other, and our parents knew each other. When Owen was young, his parents were busy with company affairs. In my family, only my father ran the company, and my mother was a full-time housewife. So we often took care of Owen together. His mother even joked that she gave birth to Owen to be a child husband in my family. During that period of time, I was so shy that I didn't know how to face him. Perhaps all the love started to sprout from there. I hadn't noticed carefully in the past days. It was only when I went to the competition alone that I realized that he had been present in every previous competition. Before boarding the plane, I hurriedly hugged him. It was the first time for me to be so straightforward, quick, and flustered. He also instinctively hugged me back. Both of us were inexperienced but happy. Owen, wait for my good news. He liked to gently stroke the top of my head, but this time he kissed me. The warm touch was different from that of his palm. Something had quietly changed, but we were still a bit ignorant. Both of us blushed at the tips of our ears quietly. Remember to be careful. Poppy, I'm looking forward to your good news. 3 days wasn't a long time. I won the championship. I heard the senior dance judges praise me for my strength and talent and look forward to my performance in the finals. But I just wanted to go home quickly and tell Owen this news. I thought that I still couldn't help showing him my best side. The 3 days seemed no different from before, except that there was an additional transfer student in the class. The transfer student was a girl named Autumn. Besides that, she was so ordinary and low-key that she was almost like a transparent person in the class. The only thing that made her stand out from others was her out-of-place temperament and behavior. We all knew that she wasn't from the same world as us. The school that Owen and I attended was a famous aristocratic school in the city. Getting a degree depended on going abroad and having artistic specialties, and neither of these could avoid the accumulation of capital. This didn't mean that we weren't excellent. On the contrary, we had more conditions and channels to choose our future paths. I got to know about Autumn from the gossip of the girls in the class during swimming lessons. In the past, I was the main target of their gossip. It was all about me, including my relationship with Owen. After Autumn transferred here, their focus finally shifted from me. But I didn't care about their gossip and comments. I was quite satisfied with myself. And I also knew that the main reason for their behavior was envy. Girls, today I saw Owen reject a girl's love letter and chocolates again. Cut. That's not big news. Don't be so reluctant. Owen and Poppy in our class are already a couple, okay? Look, it's been almost 3 years. When has our school hunk Owen ever overstepped the bounds with other girls? Someone beside them echoed. Yeah, they grew up together. If nothing unexpected happens, they will probably get married in the future. At least there's a possibility of a business marriage. I heard it from my brother. Alas, it's a pity for our school hunk Owen. Poppy is usually so cold and proud. When she dances, she's so arrogant that she seems to look down on everyone. She really thinks she's a princess. Hearing this sentence, I couldn't help raising my eyebrows. It was really slander. I didn't think I had the overbearing manner of a rich young lady. The expressions in my dance were also guided by the teacher and followed the rules. If I had to say something, it was only that I would show off my honors to close people when I was young. I'm a slow-to-warm-up person. Besides Owen, I didn't have any other friends since I was a child. I thought having Owen was enough, so I didn't participate in their small groups at first. I hadn't listened to gossip for a few days. Unexpectedly, my reputation had further deteriorated. Poppy. She's really good at dancing. I've also learned dance, but I have to say that she was really beautiful, confident, and enjoyed herself at the school anniversary. Anyway, someone likes her. Look at those boys in our class. Alas, since there's Poppy, why was I born, Nana? Ha ha ha, Nana, although, you're still a little bit behind. Let's stop talking about her, or she'll come in soon. Hey, do you know how that Autumn in our class transferred here? The voices of several girls chatting and joking reached my private dressing room a few seconds later. This swimming pool was funded by my father. Thanks to him, I had a small private dressing room in the women's dressing room. I really didn't like changing clothes in public. I don't know. But it's really strange. Judging from her appearance, I feel that she can't afford to study in our school. Puff. Ha ha ha, several girls laughed wantonly. I heard that she's a piano learner. Her family asked relatives who worked in the cafeteria to pull strings and took the quota of a student who was going abroad in advance to get in. A girl complained, ah. Then why was she assigned to our class? Is our class's comprehensive quality that bad? We're the best in the whole school. Especially with Owen and Poppy in our class. I don't know. The school leaders just randomly chose a class. Hey, wait. Is she a piano learner? Last time when we had piano lessons, she played. There was another burst of mocking laughter. I just pushed open the door of the dressing room and saw Autumn standing alone with her swimsuit in her hand when I turned my head. The afternoon sunlight shone in through a gap on one side. We could see the tiny dust floating in the air. She hung her head low. Her thick bangs covered her eyes. Her facial features were a bit ordinary, but her skin was good. I remembered the undisguised ridicule I had heard when I was changing clothes just now. She must be very sad now. No matter whether you care about others' comments on you or not, it's inevitable that you will feel uncomfortable. Are you Autumn? She was a bit stunned when she heard me call her name and nodded blankly. I've finished changing. You can go in and change. She was still in a daze as I walked away. It was just a sudden outburst of kindness. Dad had said that we should always keep good intentions and do more good deeds, and then our lives would be luckier. In a place like the public dressing room that wasn't particularly private, she heard those words mocking herself. Although there were partitions and screens, she should be embarrassed to change clothes under the gaze of others who might show up at any time. I walked to the group of girls who were joking around in my swimsuit. They were applying lipstick and loose powder in front of the mirror. They didn't seem to expect that I had been in the dressing room next to them just now. Poppy, you were in the dressing room just now. We were just wondering why we didn't see you when we left. A girl looked a bit embarrassed, but I didn't even remember her name. I just nodded with a smile, leaned forward with my arms crossed, and said seriously to the gossipy girl, "Your lipstick is on your teeth." It made her scramble to find tissues. You see, everyone has an embarrassing moment. During class, we all wore our own swimsuits. After all, swimming lessons were the best place to show off our figures. Whose skin was fair and tender, and whose muscles were firm, were all clearly visible. A nice swimsuit was essential. Only Autumn and the whole class wore the swimsuit uniformly distributed by the school. The old-fashioned design was a bit conservative and seemed out of place with us. She stood at the very end of the queue, clenching her fists tightly. She still didn't comb up her thick fringe, but this time her eyes could be seen, filled with timidity. She cast a grateful look at me, and I withdrew my gaze that had been sizing her up. After the swimming teacher led us to finish the warm-up preparations, he blew the whistle and let us move freely, on the condition that we had to swim back and forth for one lap. All of us could swim. Some people even had swimming pools at home, and usually in physical education classes, everyone would jump into the pool after warming up. In the huge swimming pool, boys and girls were laughing and playing together. Owen and I swam a lap first as required, and then found a corner to stay together after that. The feelings that had burst out because of the parting at the airport seemed to have hidden away in daily life again. It was just that when I thought about it, I would feel a bit shy and embarrassed. I circled around him until his arm in the water pulled me back, and then I stopped this dizzying and boring game. I blinked at him with a bit of a playful smile on my face. "Owen, I did a good deed today." "Did a good deed again?" He laughed amusedly. I blinked. "Yes, I. Help. Hell. Help." A cry for help came. It sounded a bit unfamiliar. Owen and I both looked back at the same time. There was a girl behind us who seemed to be drowning. People in the class gathered in scattered groups at the far end of the pool. The teacher was also talking to them, and 2 or 3 others were completing the assigned tasks. Only Owen and I were the closest. Before I could react, Owen had already swum over quickly and dragged the drowning girl out of the pool. It was Autumn. I thought it should be her. It's just that nobody cared whether she could swim or not, and she didn't explain her situation either. The commotion here alerted the large group over there, and they all swam over with a splash. The swimming teacher took over from Owen to rescue the drowning Autumn. I knew I shouldn't, but when I saw Owen holding Autumn and giving her first aid by pressing on her chest, a slight discomfort still rose in my heart. It was so slight that it disappeared in an instant. Perhaps I had heard too much of their gossip about Owen's special treatment of me and couldn't accept his closeness to other girls. I had already regarded Owen as something private to me in my heart. 1 or 2 strange looks that seemed to be directed at me. It seemed to be saying, "Poppy, why is Owen so intimate with another girl?" Obviously, the teacher has come to help, but he still volunteered to send her to the infirmary. He wasn't like this before. I scolded myself for being too sensitive. She was drowning, and how could I care about these things? Anyone would do the same in this situation. Since that drowning incident, Autumn had become more conspicuous in the class because of her relationship with Owen. She was grateful to Owen for saving her from drowning in the pool, and Owen knew and appreciated her persistence in pursuing her dreams. I had never seen Owen chatting with a girl other than me, nor had I seen him smiling so sincerely at another girl. I found that I was no longer special to Owen. Sometimes, fate is always so unexpected and unpredictable. Not only did I notice Owen's change, but everyone felt it too. Gossip in the class started to spread, and I didn't do anything, but I became the center of the public opinion storm. More and more strange looks were directed at me. What were they hiding? I didn't know, but it just made me very uncomfortable. Someone deliberately came to ask me, "Poppy, don't you think Owen and Autumn have a very good relationship recently? I saw Owen smiling at her last time. Aren't you and Owen childhood sweethearts? Poppy, don't you mind?" I knew they just wanted to see me, who had been proud for so long and was excellent in almost every aspect, being replaced by a girl who was inferior to me in every way. To see me defeated once, to let me know that I'm not unique, to let me know that I can't have everything. But I have my pride. I didn't want others to see my helplessness and panic when facing Owen's change. I also needed to keep my dignity. I pretended that nothing had happened and was the same as usual. I even endured not questioning him. I kept telling myself that the friendship between Autumn and Owen was only human nature because Owen had saved Autumn in the pool. I shouldn't be too sensitive or care too much. I should ignore those malicious remarks. In the following days, I needed to do intensive training for the final competition of the next semester. I spent every afternoon in the school dance studio. Maybe only when I practiced until I was sweating all over and my back was aching could I ignore those annoying taunts. The only drawback was that I couldn't go home with Owen anymore. I didn't know if we would become estranged because of the decreasing communication. This thought subconsciously flashed through my mind, and I couldn't help humming and denying it. How could it be? We had been childhood sweethearts for so many years. How could it be possible? That afternoon, the sun was just right. It was a rare sunny day in November. I walked in the sunshine to the piano room to find Owen. Whether as a temporary hobby or a professional specialty learned from primary school to high school, students were required to learn one or two, and the teachers in the school were all experts in the industry. I deliberately learned classical dance, while Owen was going to inherit the family business in the future, so he casually chose piano as a noble specialty at that time. I was walking up the stairs to the second floor, feeling a bit excited. Owen should be very surprised to see me. I had practiced quite hard these days. The teacher asked me to leave early today. It happened that it wasn't time to leave school yet, so I could go home with him. I had so many things to tell him. I stood at the door and peeked inside. There were 3 pianos in one piano room, and only 2 pianos had people sitting in front of them. And the Owen I saw was holding a music score and bending over to say something to Autumn, who was sitting on the piano bench. Both of them had smiles on their faces and seemed to be having a great conversation. The sunlight shone on them, looking so beautiful and pure. Owen. Another classmate was wearing headphones with a noise-canceling system and didn't hear me, while Autumn and Owen, who weren't wearing headphones, looked at me in unison. Their tacit understanding made my originally good mood disappear in an instant. "Poppy? You're here." He casually handed the piano score in his hand to Autumn and walked towards me. I forced a smile, trying to be as playful as usual. "Yes." Surprised. "I've been practicing very hard recently. The teacher asked me to leave early." "Owen, are we going home together?" When I said this sentence I was unusually nervous. In my mind I remembered the childish joys and sorrows in primary school. Will you play with me or with her? Owen would always choose me without hesitation. Owen was silent for a moment and his tone was a bit apologetic. "Sorry, Poppy. I promised Autumn before that I would help her correct her fingering today." I turned my gaze to Autumn. She had already stood up from the piano bench with her head hanging down, still looking timid. "Well, Owen, you can go first. I can manage it by myself." Hearing this, Owen immediately said, "Are you sure? With your half-baked fingering?" Autumn's face turned red, looking extremely cute in the sunlight. I heard Owen's soft laughter, muffled like the joy after a successful prank. I had never seen Owen like this before, just like I didn't know what he and Autumn had experienced during this period. However, it didn't affect that I now felt like an outsider. But why? Clearly I was the childhood sweetheart who had been with Owen day and night. The person at the other piano also quietly took off his headphones at this time. I forcibly suppressed the unknown emotions welling up in my heart and the inexplicable soreness in my nose and pretended to be relaxed. "All right, Owen, then I'll leave first." It was only when I walked out of the school gate that I dared to let down my disguise. This was the first time he didn't choose me. How sad. I felt an endless sense of grievance and sourness welling up in my heart. I didn't know how to describe this sourness. Maybe the happiness I felt when I was with Owen multiplied by 10 could offset this time. I looked up at the sky, wanting to pour the wet liquid in my eyes back in so that it wouldn't flow out. By accident my sight swept over the reflective mirror on the roadside. A tall man was following me, not too far away or too close. A sense of crisis inexplicably rose in my heart. It wasn't far from the villa area where I lived, and there were surveillance cameras everywhere. He probably wouldn't dare to do anything. I thought so, but my steps uncontrollably quickened. He seemed to notice that I had discovered him, so he simply quickened his pace and chased after me until he stopped in front of me. When I couldn't help shrinking back and exclaimed in surprise, he took out a small hand cream from his pocket and handed it to me. A product promoter? I didn't react to the situation for a moment and subconsciously looked at him warily. He was really tall. I'm a dance student and not short in height, but I still had to look up when looking at him. He was wearing a mask, but from the outline I could see that his facial features were three-dimensional. He was just wearing a black hoodie, and from the material it could be seen that this piece of clothing wasn't a high-end product. After just 2 seconds of looking at him, I heard him speak, "Return it to you." Return it to me? I looked at the hand cream he handed over. It was indeed the brand I often bought. I subconsciously took it. Then he turned around and left, leaving me completely confused. Hand cream. In an instant a memory flashed through my mind. During this winter vacation, when I was shopping in the mall with my mother, she met a friend, so she asked the driver to send me home first. There was a man leaning against the corner in the underground parking lot. The light of the car shone on him, making him squint his eyes slightly. He was wearing a not too thick gray padded jacket in the cold winter. Except for the bruises at the corners of his mouth and eyes, it wasn't obvious where else he was injured. Inexplicably, I felt a bit sorry for him. I stood beside the car and asked the driver to take out the Yunnan Bayou prepared in the car and give it to him. He didn't take it, but just leaned against the corner by himself to relieve the pain on his body. The driver put the small medicine beside him on the ground, and my eyes also fell on his hand hanging aside. His hands were long, rough, chapped and bleeding. If they were taken good care of, they should be a pair of very beautiful hands. I took out the newly bought hand cream from the shopping bag. "Uncle Chen, take this too." I accidentally caught a glimpse that he seemed to raise his eyelids and look over here. Ignoring his unusually swollen eyes and the large bruise at the corner of his right mouth, actually, he was quite handsome. I deliberately explained, "It's newly bought and hasn't been used." Putting away the memories, this matter was just a small episode that I could easily forget for me. The hand cream wasn't expensive either. I didn't expect that guy to be quite particular about it. He deliberately came to give me a fright. The next day when I went to school, I deliberately didn't wait for Owen. I hoped that he could sense my little tantrum through this subtle behavior of mine. However, instead of getting his inquiry and comfort, I watched him and Autumn being punished to stand outside the classroom for being late together with the whole class. Owen didn't actually need to be punished. A little tardiness was nothing compared to his excellence and prominent family background. But it was different for Autumn. The dean of students with a stern face scolded her and ordered her to stand outside the classroom to read aloud in the morning. With just average abilities, you should work hard to improve. It's already senior year and you're still late. Are you worthy of your parents who sent you here? Go and stand outside. Apparently the dean of students knew about her situation. Autumn's little face turned pale and she walked out timidly. Wait. These two words instantly attracted everyone's attention. Only Owen was standing at the door. He was wearing a white shirt and looked like an upright pine tree full of youthful vitality. The corners of his mouth were slightly curved upward, always making people feel as warm as being bathed in the spring breeze. But only those who had close contact with him would know that he was actually aloof. I had always been secretly proud of the unique intimacy he showed towards me. "Sir, I was also late. Let me stand as punishment with classmate Autumn." Without waiting for the dean of students to respond, under the watchful eyes of everyone, he turned around and walked outside the classroom to stand side by side with Autumn. In the next second, the gazes in the class seemed to turn into tangible sharp edges stabbing at me, and there were also whispers covered up by the sound of reading aloud. I kept a straight face all the time, lowering my eyelashes and staring at the book on the desk. But only I knew how embarrassed I was at that moment. However, I could only hold back my tears and pretend that I didn't care. I had always been the proud and perfect Poppy. But if I had to be an ostrich that was afraid and unwilling to face things and just hid in the corner, that would be okay too. I just wanted to save my dignity. Poppy, you took the wrong book. It's English reading aloud this morning. I stiffly turned my head to reply to my deskmate, restraining my eyes from looking at the two people standing outside the window. I just like reading the Chinese book. After class, I escaped from this suffocating classroom. In front of the mirror in the washroom, I turned on the faucet and let the water flow freely in my palm. It was cold but also sobering. Taking a deep breath and looking at myself in the mirror, I looked a bit gloomy and forced a smile. "Poppy, there you are?" Footsteps sounded behind me, and I instantly put on my best appearance. "What's up? Do you need something from me?" Several girls came over with teasing smiles on their faces and asked as if they were watching a good show. "Poppy, what's going on? Why did Owen come with Autumn, that poor student, today? Did you two have a fight? What kind of fight was it that was so serious that you're not together anymore?" "Yeah, Poppy. You two grew up together since childhood. We all thought you two were inseparable. How come there's someone else in between now?" One girl covered her mouth and laughed. "And that someone is Autumn." I folded my arms across my chest, which was a defensive posture, and gave a fake smile with narrowed eyes. "Yeah, since Autumn can get in between, you guys should work harder too." Seeing that they were left speechless by my words, I didn't feel much pleasure. I walked around them and left the washroom. In the classroom, Owen walked over, and Autumn beside him had a cautious look in her eyes. "Poppy, I'm sorry. I forgot to tell you. Yesterday I promised Autumn to go and pick up a used piano with her. The seller was going to move it away this morning. We just got the news last night, so we rushed there early this morning. You didn't wait for me for long, did you?" I could hardly imagine that a young master who had lived a privileged life for 18 years would accompany someone else to buy a second-hand piano early in the morning. And it was also hard not to think that there wasn't even time to send me a message between last night and this morning. It was simply that he didn't care. I comforted myself in my heart. "It's okay, Poppy. Didn't you also not plan to wait for him this morning? It was just a coincidence. We can call it a draw." "Is the proud little princess really angry?" Seeing my hesitation, Owen asked with a smile. This was the first time he had called this embarrassing nickname in front of others. His voice wasn't loud, but that didn't mean others wouldn't listen attentively. Autumn, who was closest to us, blushed with embarrassment and let out a shy laugh when she heard this nickname. My heart was filled with shame, anger, and bitterness. I clenched my hands in my pockets tightly to keep myself calm. "Owen, when did the tacit understanding between us become the joke you used to amuse others?" I didn't wait for long. When it was time, I left. The corners of my mouth, which had never been relaxed, made me look a bit tired. "That's good. By the way, I'll wait for you after school today." He rubbed the top of my hair with his palm. I nodded perfunctorily. I didn't feel happy because of his promise to wait. I spent the whole afternoon in the dance studio. I didn't get distracted. I always went all out when it came to the things I loved. I just occasionally hoped that time would pass more slowly during the few minutes of rest. I didn't know what kind of emotion I should use to face an Owen who seemed a bit strange to me. In just half a month's time, it seemed that Owen and I were drifting further and further apart. The dance practice ended at 5:30 in the afternoon. There was a message from Owen 10 minutes ago on my phone. "Poppy, I'll wait for you in the lobby of the art building." The lobby was on the first floor. I quickly changed my clothes and went downstairs. I took it for granted that he would be alone, but on the sofa in the lobby, Autumn was sitting beside him, sipping milk tea. Seeing me coming down, they both stood up together. Owen handed me the milk tea in his hand. The milk tea that the little princess has been longing for. I subconsciously took a step back. I didn't take my hands out of my coat pockets and just pulled the corners of my mouth and refused. "You know I can't drink milk tea with high sugar content." This sentence seemed to make Autumn feel embarrassed. She held the milk tea, not knowing what to do. There was still a mouthful of it in her mouth. She couldn't swallow it or spit it out, and she bent over, choking and coughing. Owen turned sideways and patted her on the back. "Are you okay?" She nodded and said to me a bit nervously, "Poppy, I recommended buying this milk tea. I didn't know that you." "I'm sorry. You're too nervous. Poppy won't mind." Owen comforted her. Autumn wasn't very familiar with us. After leaving the school gate, only Owen and I walked together. Strangely enough, although I had walked with him for so many years, this time I felt oppressed. I just hoped that this road could end earlier so that I could go home earlier. However, there were some things that I had to figure out in my heart. Otherwise, I would be tortured to the point of collapse by myself and everything around me. "Owen, what's going on between you and Autumn?" I summoned up my courage. It wasn't an interrogation. I just hoped for an answer. No matter what was going on between him and Autumn, I just wanted an answer. Hearing my question, Owen frowned. "Do you mind?" He sighed. "It's not what you think between her and me. Poppy, I also need friends. Autumn is a very nice girl. She's very persistent in her dreams and has suffered a lot. So I'm willing to help her." Hearing these words, I couldn't help but have my eyes filled with tears. "What about me? I also have dreams and have suffered a lot too." "Why?" He interrupted me. "You two are different, Poppy. You have enough capital and talent to support your dreams. But Autumn has nothing except her unwavering heart. She needs more encouragement and help. I met someone for the first time who was as resilient as grass and made me couldn't help but want to give her a hand. Poppy, I really admire her." I couldn't help choking with sobs. "Owen, when did you become such a kind person? Do you know that some people in the class are laughing at me? Do you know that I was scared when I went home by myself yesterday? You don't know. You only know that you're going to accompany Autumn to pick up the piano tomorrow, and you even ignored the time to send me a message. I always thought that we were special to each other. But I found that it's not the case." Owen rarely spoke in a cold and serious tone. "Poppy, we're not each other's appendages. Our worlds can't revolve completely around each other." Hearing these words, I got so angry that I almost shouted out, "Then why did you pull away so quickly without giving me any time to prepare? Why can your friendship with her, which has only lasted for a few months, outweigh our friendship of over 10 years? Owen, if you want to be good friends with Autumn, then don't be good friends with me." After saying that, I stormed off angrily. The wind in November blew my nose red. Looking back on those words, I felt that I was too impulsive and childish. What did I mean by saying that if he wanted to be good friends with Autumn, he shouldn't be good friends with me? Owen and I were not just simple friends. But I felt a bit discouraged. Besides friends and childhood sweethearts, what else could define our relationship? I really regarded Owen as very important, extremely important. I didn't regret my impulsiveness at that time. It was really uncomfortable to have some negative emotions weighing on my heart. Although I had always pretended not to care, Owen, I really did mind. Their maliciousness and, you who were pushing me further and further away. There was about a month left before the winter vacation. Owen and I had a falling out. I was unilaterally in a cold war with him. It was obvious and resolute. This actually left those who were waiting to watch the show with no chance to do so. The person who was always with Owen became Autumn. If he wanted, there would be more people vying to be with him all the time. But I wasn't bad either. Since that day, the stack of love letters in my drawer had gradually become thicker. I poured all my energy into my training to numb myself when I occasionally saw them together. I didn't want to admit it, but there was still a tinge of sadness. Every night before going to bed, I would wonder what magic Autumn had. The relationship that Owen and I had cultivated over so many years, a relationship that no one could break into, she had gained in just a few months. At first, I wasn't used to it. Occasionally, I would be soft-hearted and think that actually, as long as he coaxed me a little, I would become less angry. Owen's attitude towards me hadn't changed. He was still gentle. That serious quarrel seemed like an illusion, which made me look willful and childish instead. He seemed to be waiting for a child to admit defeat and apologize, and then teach her that the world didn't revolve around her. And I didn't know if he understood that I didn't mind whether he made friends with Autumn or not. What I minded was that I was no longer the special person to him. I didn't compromise, and he wouldn't either. We were locked in a complex and stalemated relationship, competing with each other. I knew that I cared a lot about my pride. And I also knew that many people were waiting to see my sad look after Owen and I broke up. To disappoint them and also to make myself feel better, I found some trendy shops that were suitable for checking in. Originally, I had planned to go out and play with Owen during the winter vacation. Coincidentally, I met that boy again in a dessert shop. It seemed that he was working part-time here. Although it was already December, he wasn't dressed very warmly. He was wearing the work uniform uniformly distributed by the shop. If it weren't for his outstanding appearance and figure, I might not have recognized him. "Hello, miss. Would you like to place an order?" I only realized that I had been staring at him for too long and was a bit rude when he spoke. "Yes. Do you have any desserts with low sugar content?" I looked up at him. Among the more than 30 plans, only a dessert shop and a trendy milk tea shop touched my taboos. After restraining myself and making a choice, I thought there would surely be a lot of people in the milk tea shop, so I came to this niche dessert shop. However, I didn't dare to let loose either. He handed the ordering tablet to me. His tall figure bending down gave off a sense of oppression. The sugar content of French berry croissants and strawberry mochi is the lowest, not exceeding 5 grams. His voice was deep and low and it made my ears tingle even through the mask. I coughed slightly. "Then I'll have these too." "Okay." He took the tablet and walked away. I let out a sigh of relief. When the 2 desserts were served, I realized that I had ordered too much and the portions were quite big. My mind had gone blank just now and I hadn't thought at all about how I could fit 2 desserts into my small stomach. Seeing that there were not many people in the shop, I hesitated for a moment and then waved to him to come over. "What's the matter, miss?" I felt a bit embarrassed. "Well, could I ask you for a favor?" Before he could reply, I made up my mind and pushed the croissant on the delicate pink plate towards him. "I ordered too much and would like to ask you to share some with me." I looked around again and asked worriedly, "Will this have any impact on you?" A hint of mixed emotions flashed in his eyes. After hesitating for a few seconds, he said, "Miss, I'm full." I saw that he had misunderstood that I was pitying him like I did when I gave him medicine last time. Also remembering that he was a man with a strong sense of self-esteem, I quickly waved my hand guiltily. "No, it's that I ordered too much. I didn't know the portions were so big. I'm a dance student and there are dietary restrictions. Besides, I usually can't eat so much." "I didn't mean that. Don't misunderstand. It's okay. I can manage it by myself." Before I could finish speaking, I saw him push the chair opposite me aside and sit down. Then he casually took off his mask. "Then thank you, miss." Seeing that he didn't mind, I let out another sigh of relief. "My name is Poppy. Don't call me miss. It sounds strange." He looked up. It was the first time that I had formally seen his appearance. Just as I had guessed in the underground parking lot before, he was really handsome. He had an excellent bone structure and facial features. Especially those eyes, which were very black and bright. His three-dimensional facial features carried a hint of wildness. Avoiding looking into his eyes, I heard him say, "Okay, thank you, Poppy." I focused on the white and glutinous strawberry mochi in front of me. I had to say that tasting desserts could make people forget their troubles. Hearing the crispy sound of the croissant being bitten from across the table, I subconsciously looked up and saw that he didn't use the dessert fork beside the plate in a refined way. Instead, he directly picked up the croissant as big as my palm and finished it in just a couple of bites. There was no sign of messiness at all. He was very straightforward and unrestrained. "Thank you." He stood up, his voice deep and muffled. This was the second time he had said thank you. I felt a bit embarrassed. After all, it was I who had asked him to share. No need. I should be the one to say thank you. Just as he was turning around to leave with the plate in his hand, I stopped him. "By the way, what's your name?" I had never taken the initiative to make friends before and stammered, "We've met 3 times already, but I still don't know your name." "Silas." "I'm Silas." I had been alone these days. It seemed that I had gradually gotten used to not having Owen's company, but the companionship of over 10 years with him couldn't be erased in an instant. It's just that, sometimes even I myself was in a daze. Was I trapped by Owen as a person or trapped in the time that I thought was so precious? Perhaps what I couldn't let go of wasn't him, but the time and memories of over 10 years of companionship. This was just a fleeting thought of mine. Our relationship eased during the spring festival. Our two families visited each other as usual. Even if I didn't want to see Owen, it was inevitable. My parents thought we were just having a childish quarrel and asked Owen to take me to the back garden to set off fireworks. According to the convention, should we set off sparklers first? Owen turned his head and asked me, his peach blossom eyes full of smiles. "I don't want to set them off. I want to go upstairs and rest." The moment I thought that he had also smiled at Autumn so gently, I felt it was meaningless. "Is Poppy still angry?" He took the initiative to admit his mistake. "It's my fault, okay? I shouldn't have failed to notice your emotions. I shouldn't have made friends with Autumn and ignored you. Can Poppy forgive me?" I frowned a little. Did Owen think I was angry because of this? Well, it did seem that I was being childish and petty by being angry about this. I couldn't describe the feeling of being betrayed and abandoned. After all, between Owen and me, it couldn't really be called betrayal or abandonment. I didn't say anything. He pulled my wrist and took out a velvet gift box from the pocket of his down jacket. It was a crystal bracelet. "This is a New Year's gift for the little princess. I hope she can forgive me. I will definitely reflect deeply on my mistakes and try my best not to make the little princess angry in the new year." His tone was sincere and gentle. I knew he was trying to coax me. I sighed inwardly. Nearly 18 years of companionship. "Poppy, you shouldn't keep being childish and throwing tantrums." I remained silent but took the gift. He understood what I meant and knew that I had forgiven him. My emotions changed quickly. Especially without the interfering factors at school, Owen and I went back to our previous state. However, we didn't want to mention what was mixed in between. In the second semester of senior year, I saw a crystal bracelet on Autumn's wrist. It seemed to be from the same series as the one Owen gave me. Autumn always wore the school uniform obediently every day. That crystal bracelet was shiny and was the only sparkle on her. I wasn't as irritable as I had imagined. I just took off the chain on my right wrist when no one noticed and casually threw it into the pocket of my school bag. Everyone, including me, had already gotten used to the relationship between Owen and Autumn. Other people's scrutiny and my pride forced me to be magnanimous and accept Autumn's existence. And the relationship of over 10 years as childhood sweethearts and the connection between our two families couldn't make me cut off my feelings for Owen. Nobody was in the wrong. Autumn was working hard to pursue her dream. She was right to be grateful to Owen, who had helped her and saved her from difficulties. Owen admired Autumn's tenacity and perseverance and was willing to help her and assist her in chasing her dream. He was also right. But if I didn't accept Autumn's existence, through tantrums, and forced Owen to go back to how he was before Autumn appeared, then it would be my fault. Just like in the campus romance novels I secretly read a long time ago, the vicious female supporting role who was condemned by thousands of people, spat on, and had a miserable ending. Even if she used all means, she couldn't keep her fiancé and could only watch helplessly as a person who was inferior to her in every way easily replaced the relationship of many years and eliminated her. I didn't expect that now I had almost become that pitiful female supporting role, however. I was a proud person and didn't want to play the role they expected. Whenever I was exhausted, I always thought that when I won a prize in the competition and entered the university I had been longing for and shone brightly in that field, my life would be more wonderful. I really enjoyed dancing in the spotlight. The accident came quickly. In mid-May when we were about to graduate, the school organized an outing. This was a convention in previous years, hoping to deepen the friendship among classmates who were about to go their separate ways. The place for the outing was chosen by voting and it was a small mountain village in a rather remote suburb. Everyone was tired of staying in the city made of steel and concrete and yearned for places with beautiful mountains and clear waters more. This place had been developed, and there were several rather steep small mountains, which were suitable for climbing. They said there was also a waterfall. There was still half a month until the competition. Originally, I didn't plan to go. With Owen and also Autumn, I thought it would be a bit tough. Owen had got the recommended quota for the Department of Finance at Tsinghua University or Peking University a few days ago, and the university I wanted to go to was not far from there. I was doing the splits in a daze, with a faint expectation in my heart. Perhaps in college, without Autumn, Owen and I could go back to our previous state completely. Was it possible? I was actually hesitant in my heart. Poppy, why are you still practicing? Owen is waiting for you downstairs. Mom walked into my practice room and urged me. I subconsciously frowned. I've already said I'm not going. I don't want to go. Oh, Owen said it's a rare chance to go out and play. You've been under too much pressure recently. Go out and relax. Mom thinks he's right. Don't worry too much about that competition. Just do your best. Mom and Dad can afford to support you. Why are you working so hard? Mom, you're so nagging. Okay, I'll go. I'll go. Thinking that there would be another round of advice about lying flat at home, I shouted without hesitation to cover her voice and then lay on the floor exhausted, stretching out a hand to Mom. I got up only when she pulled me. You're such a big girl now and still act so spoiled. Our two families had close contacts, so Owen's fingerprint password was registered. After I changed my clothes, he had been waiting in the living room downstairs for a while. This outing was voluntary. Those who wanted to go could go. We were supposed to gather at the school gate at 10 o'clock in the morning. Before leaving, Mom casually asked Owen to take care of me and wished us a good time. Just some ordinary words that none of us took to heart. It was already 12 o'clock when the bus arrived at the suburbs. The weather was a bit gloomy. Everyone was complaining that the day hadn't been chosen well and that it was a rainy day, but it couldn't hide their enthusiasm for climbing the mountain. I didn't want to come in the first place and just followed Owen silently. Autumn was originally walking side by side with us, but she was a bit shorter and couldn't keep up with our pace, so she fell a few steps behind. Owen deliberately waited for her, which also affected my pace. Most of the time, the three of us were silent, and occasionally there were conversations between Owen and Autumn. Autumn said how much she envied us and that our future was bright while her dreams seemed so far away. Owen comforted her not to underestimate herself and said that she had made rapid progress. The weather in late May could change quickly. People could still accept the light and continuous rain. Besides, we had brought enough raincoats, but when the rain became heavier and heavier and showed signs of turning into a heavy rainstorm, everyone realized something was wrong and started to return along the way one after another. We three were at the end of the line when we came, and we were still at the end of the line when we returned. Just as we stepped onto the newly built road, a rumbling sound as fierce as a flood rang in our ears, even drowning out the girls' screams. On the mountain side of the road, mud and stones rolled down with a clattering sound, carrying sparse branches and huge rocks, with a momentum of rushing down irresistibly. I don't remember where I read it before, but it said that when people encounter a life-threatening danger, they will first be stunned, just like in the few seconds before a car accident. However, these few seconds are often crucial. And in my case, during these few seconds, I subconsciously looked at Owen, looked at my salvation, and looked at the person who I thought was important to me. I thought he would be there for me. But these few seconds were really long. I watched as Owen, just like me, subconsciously turned around and shielded Autumn behind him, using his own body to completely protect her under him. In this devastated place, he looked extraordinarily reassuring. The salvation wasn't for me, and the sense of security didn't belong to me either. 18 years, Owen. I kind of hate you now. Poppy, Poppy, Poppy. Don't fall asleep. It's okay, it's okay. I was in a daze of buzzing sounds and heard someone calling my name. This brief moment of lucidity was like a flashback. My cheeks were being wiped clean of the mud, gently yet roughly. Silas. I struggled to open my eyes, and the first thing I saw was Silas' face dripping with rain. There was chaos all around, and the rescue workers who came to deal with the emergency kept shouting, "Quick! Quick!" The rain didn't stop, and Silas was kneeling and holding me in the rain like a stone statue, using the upper half of his body to block most of the rain for me. "It hurts so much, Silas, it hurts." For no reason, when I saw him, I felt extremely aggrieved. And this grievance was something I could pour out, like a little beast that had been bullied finally having someone to back it up. My eyes were filled with hot tears, which made me realize that it wasn't the rain falling on my face. He tightened his arms around me, trying to comfort and give me strength in this way, but his face was extremely tense. "It's okay, Poppy. You've been rescued. You'll be fine. The ambulance will be here soon." He kept saying these words in my ear, but I didn't even have the strength to clench his clothes. I could only murmur, "It hurts." My ankle hurt so much. By the time the ambulance arrived, I wasn't very conscious anymore. Subconsciously, I only trusted Silas and didn't want to be taken away by them. It was only when he told me to go and receive treatment obediently that I relaxed and completely passed out. When I closed my eyes, I saw a flash of Silas' 10 fingertips covered in mud and bleeding. "I can't dance anymore." I heard my mother sobbing. Through the glass, I saw her covering her mouth tightly, afraid that I, who was sleeping in the ward, would hear her. "Poppy has suffered so much to practice dancing. The competition was only half a month away. It's all my fault. I shouldn't have let her go." Dad hugged her. "Doctor, are there any other treatment methods? Isn't there any chance of recovery at all?" "Money is not a problem." The doctor's voice was calm. "The probability is very small. Fortunately, the rescue was timely, and the huge stone pressing on the right ankle didn't cause deeper damage. And because the body wasn't moved randomly after being rescued, it didn't cause trouble for the subsequent treatment. It's just that, for strenuous activities like dancing and long-distance running, they should still be avoided to prevent secondary injuries. After all, this matter couldn't be kept hidden." I watched as my mother, with red eyes and a haggard look, said that she would take me abroad for treatment. She said that even if she had to find all the famous doctors in the world, she would cure my leg. I didn't say anything, as if the person who couldn't dance wasn't me. I was hospitalized for a long time. The originally set competition date rang on my mobile phone, and then there were also encouragements for the college entrance examination. I wasn't the only one injured in that disaster, but I was the one who suffered the most serious consequences. Teachers came to express their regrets to my parents one after another, and classmates in the class whom I didn't even know all came to say that they wanted to visit me with a sense of classmate affection, sympathy, pity. They were undoubtedly knives stabbing at my heart. The Poppy who used to be in the spotlight had fallen into the dust. The nurse said that there was a boy waiting outside my ward door every day. I knew it was Owen. Since my mother refused to let him see me at the beginning, he only dared to wait outside the ward door. That was also the first time I saw my mother so angry. She didn't care about the friendship between our two families for so many years at all. Well, why should we care about the friendship for so many years? It was Owen who gave up the friendship of so many years first. It was already July when I was discharged from the hospital. The continuous treatment and rehabilitation were unbearable for me. Owen was standing at the entrance of the hospital. The way he was wearing a white shirt reminded me of the scene when he and Autumn were punished by standing together before. It seemed like a long time had passed and things had changed. Naturally, my mother's face changed. I turned to look at her, and she understood what I meant. I wanted to make a final break, a break with my 18 years. This was a meeting after a long separation. I sat in the wheelchair, neither sad nor happy, but his eyes turned red. It was rather ridiculous. He seemed to be choked up and couldn't speak for a long while. I don't want to waste time with you. I'll leave if there's nothing else. I tried to push the wheels. No, don't go. I'm sorry. His voice was hoarse, and he looked extremely regretful. These 3 words seemed to burst out from his chest. Poppy, I'm sorry. I raised my eyelids to look at him, with disgust and resentment in my eyes. Your sorry can't bring back my dancing legs. You've already made your choice. That's it, Owen. My words seemed to have stimulated him. He stepped forward to stop my hands from turning the wheelchair, squatted in front of me, and his face was even more haggard than mine. His face, which used to have a clean and youthful look, now had a look of decadence. Poppy, that wasn't my choice. It was an unconscious act at that time. If the scene repeated itself, I would never do that. He shed tears. I've regretted it countless times. Autumn is a friend I admire, but you are the most important person to me. You know that. You are the most important person to me. His hands gripping the wheelchair were so tense that they turned white. We've been with each other since we could remember. How can I let you go? Poppy, we can start over. I'll take responsibility for my mistake. I'll accompany you abroad. It's not necessary, Owen. There won't be any ifs, and the scene won't repeat itself. I looked down at him and said word by word, do you know? I hate you. But I'll always miss the Owen who accompanied me while I was growing up. You're not him. Since you met Autumn, you're no longer him. The Owen in my memory would always regard me as a unique existence, not put me in a secondary position and tell me that the world doesn't revolve around me. He wouldn't wait for me to go home together just because he practiced the piano with Autumn until very late. He wouldn't buy me a cup of milk tea without considering my situation just because Autumn wanted to drink it. He wouldn't put me in such an embarrassing situation and even that bracelet. In fact, my eyes also turned red, but I smiled with a curl of my lips. I always thought you were still that Owen, so you were special to me. I brainwashed myself over and over again and gave you chances time and time again. But in the second when the disaster came, I saw you without hesitation protecting her. Then I realized that I was so stupid. The Owen I liked had already died in my memories. He tried to tremblingly hold my hand, but I dodged it. His once clear eyes were now full of bloodshot and despair. Poppy, it can still be redeemed. It can be redeemed. You can ask me to compensate you in any way you want. I can give up going to university. I can also go back to the way I was in your memory. Enough, Owen. Don't disgust me anymore. I turned my head away in disgust and said in the coldest voice, I've already said that I hate you. I don't need you to pity me, and I don't want to have anything to do with you in the future. You can wholeheartedly be with the person you want. I won't appear in your life again. Poppy, it's not pity. It's not. Dance and you were both buried on that day. Perhaps you didn't even notice it yourself, but we've already been drifting apart for a long time. Uncle Chin drove the car over. I pushed the wheelchair and the blatant disgust in my eyes made him dare not approach. All right, Owen. I hope we'll never see each other again. This time, it's not a tantrum. Owen, look, I've said goodbye to you many times. I used to think that if you hadn't met Autumn, But there aren't so many ifs. Owen didn't give up. He used his persistence to try to see me. But once I've made a decision, it won't change. The fact that he protected Autumn was equivalent to cutting off the friendship between our two families. Our family deleted his fingerprint record and I also blocked and deleted all his contact information. He always shouted my name loudly at my doorstep. This was something he wouldn't have done before, so reckless and desperate. I heard him being reprimanded, and I also heard my father earnestly telling him that if he continued to disturb the residents like this, our family would consider moving away. After that, it was indeed much quieter. Sometimes I think that fate is really magical. I was lucky to have a happy family, outstanding talents, and an excellent childhood sweetheart. But in just over half a year, I've lost most of them. During my hospitalization, the only person I agreed to see was Autumn. When she came in, she was extremely scared, afraid that I would take my anger out on her. She cried and told me about her hardships, the hardships of her parents. She also didn't know why Owen had saved her. She was very sorry about my leg, but her words were full of a sense of relief. Then I realized that Autumn, who seemed as tough as grass, was just like that. My family members all knew that my mood wasn't right. Although I looked calm on the surface, I was trying hard to suppress the surging emotions in my heart. I stayed in my room all day long and only went out to get some sun very rarely. In fact, my leg had already healed long ago, but for the sake of an impossible result, I kept getting treated, getting injured, and getting treated again. I had been trapped in that disaster and couldn't extricate myself. Orthopedic doctors and psychologists kept coming to my home. Dancing used to be my dream, and now making it possible for me to dance has become my parents' obsession. The doctor suggested that I could divert my attention by traveling and making friends. So I went to find Silas. He could rescue my body from the mudslide, and he could also pull me out of the mire of depression. In the boxing ring, Silas was steady and agile, like a wild animal hunting. Just waiting for the opponent to show a slight flaw, his tall figure nimbly dodged and threw a hook punch, knocking the opponent to the ground. Immediately, there were fierce cheers from the audience, and a group of female fans shouting, "So handsome." He got off the ring slightly panting. After a while, I also got up from the corner of the audience seats and left. This was a boxing club of a moderate size. The aisle outside the changing room was dim and damp. Silas didn't expect that I would appear here and stopped in his tracks in a daze. After changing his clothes, the muscle lines on his arms were exposed. There was bleeding from the corner of his eye where he was injured, and the knuckles of his right hand were bruised. The injuries on his 10 fingers seemed to have healed. I walked towards him and handed him the medicinal oil for treating bruises and sprains in my hand. I didn't speak until he took it. "Silas, could you do me a favor?" "Sure." He didn't hesitate. I was helpless. "I haven't even said what it is yet." In the pharmacy, I bought another bottle of iodine and some band-aids. After treating the wound at the corner of his eye, I tentatively made my request. "I'd like to ask you to be my friend. Is that okay?" Thinking that this might seem too strange to him, I immediately added, "I'm sick, psychologically speaking. I don't really feel it myself, but my doctor suggested that I could shift my attention by making friends. I've never really had many friends. I used to have one friend, but..." "So you need a friend?" he asked back, looking straight at me with his pitch-black eyes. The wound that wasn't covered by the band-aid at the corner of his eye made him look a bit wild and ruffian. "I won't take up too much of your time. If it delays your part-time job, I'll compensate you. You just need to keep me company. Just keep me company." He was silent for a moment. Just when I thought he would reject this strange request, he said that one word again, "Okay." I smiled. It was already past 4 o'clock in the afternoon. "Well, are you going to your part-time job now?" He picked up the plastic bag with the medicine in it and shook his head. "No, I'm going home to cook." Standing at the door of the small rental house, I realized how bold I had been to agree to Silas' invitation to have dinner at his place half an hour ago. Obviously, he was just being polite when he asked. I had never seen a house like this. Except for the bathroom partitioned inside, just a single bed, a small sofa, a small coffee table, and a wooden dining table almost filled up the whole house. Even the kitchen was set up in the corridor outside the house. "There aren't any extra slippers at home. You can just come in." I hesitated and looked down at the obvious dust on my shoes, which I got on my way here. White shoes showed dirt easily. The tall figure crouched down in front of me, handed the only pair of house slippers he had in his hand to my feet, and looked up at me. His hot gaze was like that of a pet dog, with its fierceness restrained, making one want to pat his head. Mine. Do you mind? I shook my head. In the next moment, his dry and rough hand grasped my ankle, which was powdered and wrapped with a thin layer of medical gauze. Don't. Because of the acupuncture and other treatments, the skin under the gauze was a bit unsightly. I didn't want others to see it. I'll be gentle. He quickly took off my shoes and put his slippers on my feet. You go in and sit down first. I'll tidy up. His shoes were too big for me, and it was even harder for me to walk in them. I dragged my feet and walked to the sofa to sit down, looking around a bit nervously. The water in the sink outside was splashing loudly. It took a while before he came in with a glass half filled with hot water, added some cold water from the water dispenser in front of it, and then handed it to the table. There haven't been any guests at home, and there aren't any extra cups. I've washed it very clean. He turned on the electric fan not far away and pointed it at me. Then he picked up the apron hanging behind the door and was ready to deal with the ingredients. He looked very domestic with the apron on. I also went over to help him. The stove outside wasn't very big. After all, it was set up in the corridor and was filled with the vegetables and meat he had just bought from the supermarket. It's dirty. Don't touch it. He grabbed my hand as I was reaching for the raw meat. With our bare skin touching, I suddenly realized that the roughness I felt on my face that day wasn't from sand but from the thick calluses on his hands. Let me give it a try. I've never done this before. Seeming to see the curiosity and interest in my eyes, he picked out the vegetables and handed them to me. Then you wash the vegetables, and I'll handle the meat. His tone had a bit of a dominant undertone. Vegetables, that was okay too. Oh, Silas, is this your girlfriend? An aunt came from the stairwell, holding a child with her left hand and carrying a bag of vegetables in her right hand. I was concentrating on washing the vegetables, rinsing each leaf several times for fear of not getting them clean, and was startled by this sudden voice. I subconsciously looked up. Oh my, Silas. Your girlfriend is so good looking. You two are a perfect match. The aunt teased meaningfully. She freed the hand that was holding the child to take out the key and open the door, still looking at us. She must be Silas' neighbor. Silas turned a little to block the gaze that was looking at me. She's not Silas' brother's girlfriend. She's his wife. The child was talking nonsense and then pointed at my feet. Mom, look. She's wearing Silas' brother's slippers. How embarrassing. The aunt laughed even more and just said, children say whatever comes to their minds, and then went inside. I was really embarrassed and subconsciously curled my toes. A strange atmosphere filled the air between us. My ears were burning, and the vegetable leaf in my hand felt like a hot potato. I pretended to cough calmly. Well, his big hand took the vegetable leaf from me. She was joking. Don't mind it. Most of the preparation here is done. You go inside first. The meal will be ready soon. I didn't refuse. Going inside was indeed a good choice. Silas cooked quickly, and the food smelled delicious. But he overestimated my appetite. I couldn't finish the big bowl he filled for me at all. Silas, I can't eat any more. I looked down at the lump of rice in the bowl and just thought it was a tough task. He looked over and then directly poured the remaining small lump of rice into his own bowl. It's okay. Don't force yourself if you can't eat it. This intimate act made that ambiguous and strange atmosphere linger in my heart again. Why didn't you take the money my dad gave you? He was still eating, and his appetite made me, with my small appetite, quite astonished. The hand holding the chopsticks paused. His voice didn't show any emotion. I don't need the money. Saving you didn't require money. The eyes that met didn't hide emotions and it made me quickly look away. But my heart seemed to still be trembling. We clearly agreed to be friends, but why did it feel so strange? The setting sun was low in the sky. He walked me home. The periphery of the villa area was luxurious and high-end, which was like a different world from the tube-shaped apartment building just now. When I was about to enter the gate, I couldn't help but turn around and ask him, Can I come to see you again tomorrow? I just wanted to confirm it. He couldn't help but curl the corners of his mouth subtly. I saw it. Yeah. Where do you want to go and play? Friend. I thought for a moment. Let's go to the amusement park. I've always wanted to go to the amusement park. Okay, but I have a match tomorrow afternoon, so I might not be able to play for the whole day. It's okay. Half a day is fine too. I showed my understanding. All right. It's too late. You go in first. He was wearing a black sleeveless vest with his hands in his pockets, standing in the shade of the trees. I walked a few steps and couldn't help but turn around to look. He was still standing there, looking at my back in the same posture without moving. I turned back again, wanting to hold on to something of his. It was a little habit of mine. But his exposed arms had neat muscle lines, so I could only restrain this little quirk. The wound at the corner of your eye hasn't healed yet. Remember to apply the medicine again when you get back. Okay. Your hands too. Okay. Chattering about this and that, I finally asked the question I wanted to ask. Silas, will you always keep me company? I didn't express myself clearly, but what I meant was, would you, like Owen, gradually drift away from me at some point? I was afraid of being abandoned, of being ignored, and of not being chosen. My sense of security was slowly disappearing. I became cowardly and sensitive. I was no longer the proud and perfect Poppy I used to be. This was the only psychological problem I had discovered about myself. Just as the doctor said, making friends could help me get out of the bad mood. The fact that I didn't feel aggrieved or resentful today, the reluctance when parting, and the expectation for tomorrow all made me realize that Silas was special to me. But what about him? I knew he was just trying to help me, but I wasn't satisfied with the utilitarian nature of our relationship. I had never received a definite promise, so I just needed a promise, even if it was just to coax me. But how could I ask Silas this question? We had only known each other for a short time. Poppy, no one can always be with someone else. He looked down at me, speaking in an especially serious tone. This was the right answer. I regretted asking such a presumptuous question. I didn't dare to look up at him. The fingers behind my back were as tangled as my thoughts. Sorry, my question was too. But if you're willing, I can always keep you company. I looked up in surprise. He didn't have much of an expression, just stared at me seriously, a bit solemn. His long black eyelashes were lowered, not overly thick, but they covered most of the emotions inside. Or perhaps, I didn't dare to look closely. How could it be possible? The wind on this summer night was a bit cool, but it couldn't blow away the heat on my cheeks. My eyes were even more evasive than before, looking a bit silly as if I was trying to hide something. He smiled and sighed. Go home first. Otherwise, it'll be too late. Okay. I fled in a hurry. Sometimes, fate always catches us off guard and is unpredictable. This was the fear that Owen and Autumn's acquaintance brought me before. Now they have been driven out of my world, but I still firmly believe in the saying. It is said in Chinchu, my fate with too many people is as fleeting as dew, only with you is it like an endless river. I don't know whether my fate with Silas is like dew or an endless river, but I'm certain that he will be my salvation. The psychologist said that I've recovered well, which also means that I need to go abroad for treatment and training as planned. But what about my boyfriend Silas? It was another fierce boxing match. I sat in the best seat arranged by him. This time, the opponent was a bit tough, but he still won. In the dressing room, I used a cotton swab to apply medicine to his wounds. I don't like the wounds that always appear on him. Even if it's just a bruise, I still feel heartbroken. Is my little darling feeling heartbroken again? It doesn't hurt. It'll be okay in a few days. Silas leaned his head on my neck and murmured. Since I confessed my love to him, his taciturn and cautious side has disappeared. Not at all. It doesn't matter whether you hurt or not. I stubbornly refused to say those mushy words. The matter of going abroad weighed on my mind, and I didn't know how to tell him. He chuckled and pulled me into his arms. He had just taken a shower and smelled of body wash. What would you like to eat tonight? Fried prawns? Or the sour and spicy shredded potatoes that you like? He often cooks. Half a month ago, on the small table in his tiny rented apartment, I asked him if he liked me, and he was so startled that he dropped his chopsticks. Naturally, I proposed that we start dating. I guess Silas would never take the initiative to break through this relationship barrier. But I'm different. I like being with him. I'm sure this is love, not out of spite, not taking advantage, but love that sprouted in just 2 months. Perhaps I shouldn't have questioned Owen's choice of autumn back then. Let's go out to eat. Let's go to the snack street you mentioned before. I pressed on a small bruise on his chin, which was hit just now when he didn't dodge in time. Ouch, are you tired of the food I cook? His tone carried a bit of a threat. His calloused hand gently pinched the soft flesh on my arm, making it itchy. I jumped out of his arms. You said it didn't hurt. Don't jump. Be careful with your ankle. He picked up my bag, stood up, and lifted me up with one hand. Let's go, Miss Poppy. The snack street at night was especially lively. Silas led me to turn left and right and arrived at a small alley. There was a wonton stall in the alley. Steam was rising from the pot, and an old grandma was wiping the countertop with a cloth. Silas? Come to eat wontons. Is this? This is my girlfriend. Her name is Chang Tang. Silas held my hand tightly, our fingers intertwined. When I proposed that we start dating, he was afraid that I would dislike him and took the initiative to tell me about his life story. He said that he was an abandoned child and was left at the entrance of Sinan Welfare Institute. Grandma Yi, who went out to buy vegetables in the morning, found him and brought him back to the Welfare Institute to adopt him. He said that all the children in the Welfare Institute had the surname C. He was named Silas because there was a road under construction that morning and the dust was flying everywhere. Grandma Yi was very kind to him. Later, after the Welfare Institute declined, she came out to run a wonton shop. He said that he didn't receive much education and started looking for a job when he was 15 or 16. He was discovered because of his physical strength and went to fight in illegal boxing matches. He didn't refuse because it was a quick way to make money. Later, when he got a bit older, he took the regular path. His eyes were obscure and hard to understand. Poppy, I've suffered a lot, but I don't feel that way myself. I only know that I have no family background, no education, and no capital. I struggled at the bottom of this world. Compared with your life, mine is like the moon in the sky and the mud on the ground. I think it's an honor for me that you can be friends with me. He spoke slowly. Poppy, I'm very self-abased. I'll take every word of yours seriously. So could you please not play with me? How did I reply to him? I just remember that his eyes were red at that time. Grandma Yi was very enthusiastic, and the portions she gave us were generous. When she looked at Silas, there was also a look of full satisfaction. It seemed that there was never a good time to mention the matter of going abroad. What's the matter? Are you unhappy today? He tucked my stray hair behind my ear. The soft flesh on my cheek was pinched, and he pretended to be fierce. Poppy, are you hiding something from me? I nodded honestly. Silas, I'm going abroad. He froze for a second and then smiled and said, going abroad. That's good. Is it to treat the injury on your leg? It's time to go and have a look. Otherwise, you're always jumping around every day, which makes people worried. When are you leaving? I may need to check if I'm free at that time. You know I've been busy with the club's affairs recently. Oh, right. Are you going alone? If you're alone, I can give you a ride, by the way. So it's so obvious when one pretends not to care. I poked his stiff muscles and deliberately said, Mom will accompany me. Treatment is one thing. I may also study at a university there. I didn't take the college entrance examination because of my injury. He couldn't smile anymore and subconsciously wanted to take out a cigarette, but his pocket was empty. I put my hand on his, and he held my hand instead. After a long silence, he said, Go, Poppy. Don't worry. I shouldn't be an obstacle on your way forward. You look so beautiful when you dance. This is your dream, and you should go and achieve it without regrets. I looked at our clasped hands. What about you? What about you, Silas? Me? Since I was born, my life has been imperfect. What I expected in the past 10 plus years was just to stay alive. But now, I also have my own dream. I asked him curiously, what is it? He deliberately made it mysterious. The date of going abroad was set in December. Because of the upcoming departure, we spent almost all of our free time together. We didn't have much intention to hide it. As expected, my parents found out about our relationship as a couple. Owen, who came back during the holiday, was the one who told them. This made me feel even more that he was contrary to the person in my memory. My parents had always thought that Silas was just my friend, so they didn't object to my contact with him. But even I myself knew that if this wasn't just a friendship, they wouldn't agree to my being with Silas. The world doesn't have a fixed class division. Class exists in people's hearts. It was already unbelievable that Owen became friends with Autumn from an ordinary family, let alone Silas's life story. Mom talked to me and asked me if it was because Silas saved me. After I denied it, she told me that without that accident, Owen and I were the most suitable couple in everyone's eyes. We had comparable family backgrounds, comparable talents and knowledge, and the friendship of growing up together. While Silas was nothing except for saving me. She said, Poppy, whether two people can be together is never measured by love. Mom doesn't mean that you should make up with Owen, but you and that boy are not a good match either. I expressed my determination firmly. I also knew that what Mom meant was what Dad meant. They didn't think highly of it and didn't agree. The reason was nothing more than that they thought Silas and I had different identities. But I believed in Silas. He definitely wouldn't stop here. As someone who grew up in such an environment, I'm not stupid either. If Silas was the kind of unambitious Phoenix man who was resigned to fate and didn't strive for progress, I wouldn't have fallen for him. In the last week before going abroad, Silas seemed to have vanished into thin air. I guess that he must have been talked to. That self-abased guy must be torturing himself somewhere again. Although I could understand it, I was still angry. On the day before my departure, I sent him some harsh words. And half an hour later, my phone was bombarded with calls. We made an appointment to meet. On the way there, I was deep in thought. How could I give this self-abased boyfriend a little more sense of security? The place we agreed to meet was outside the shopping mall. Because of the traffic jam, I was a few minutes late. After getting off the car, I saw that Owen was also standing beside Silas. I frowned subconsciously and walked over. What I heard was Owen persuading Silas to break up with me. Silas. They both turned their heads at the same time. I walked up and stood beside Silas. I habitually held his hand and felt relieved when he held my hand back. When I looked at Owen, there was undisguised disgust in my eyes. Our relationship has nothing to do with you. Poppy, we grew up together, don't mention this anymore. What does growing up together matter? It didn't stop you from choosing to save someone else when the mudslide came. His smile disappeared. Poppy, are you still blaming me for saving Autumn back then? I've said that it was just. I sneered. It was just a subconscious act, right? You don't need to say it anymore. I can recite it by heart. But Owen, I really hate you now. I didn't care how his expression changed and just dragged Silas away. I end the restaurant in the shopping mall. Silas finally chuckled and said, You're like a little chilly when you're angry. I then realized that I was still supposed to be angry with Silas. After all, he had disappeared for a week, even if there was a reason for it. What about you? He asked you to leave me, and you didn't say anything. Silas, have you given up? I deliberately said harsh words. If you've given up, then we'll break up. Chang Tang. His expression immediately changed. Don't say those two words. It doesn't matter if others say them, but I'm afraid if you say them. I won't give up. His rough and calloused hand stroked my face, and his eyes showed determination. For years. Give me 4 years. You study hard and get treated obediently. I'll take care of everything else. If after 4 years, I'm still the same Silas as I am now, I won't show up in front of you. I held his hand tightly and was unhappy. If, I said if, you really don't show up in front of me? What if I look for you? There was a muffled laugh in my ear, as if it resonated from his chest. Just now, I don't know which little darling said break up. The calluses rubbed against my ear, making it itchy. Poppy, I love you, so I hope your whole life will be happy and smooth. At least it can't be worse than before. And if I can't give you these, then I'm not qualified to love you. His words made my eyes a bit hot. I had always known it. I had always known that Silas wouldn't always be so poor and down and out. He would create a wonderful life in this somewhat cruel world, but he would have to endure a lot of hardships. I sniffed. Silas, let's work hard together. See you in 4 years. In the first year abroad, both of us were so busy that we hardly had time to communicate. I was constantly shuttling between studying and treatment, and Silas was even busier. Sometimes, he could only force himself to talk while being extremely tired. In the second year abroad, I received the final verdict. I really couldn't engage in the art of dancing anymore. It was a gentle and breezy afternoon, and somewhat surprisingly, I felt a sense of relief. Mom and Dad said they would continue to look for authoritative doctors in other countries, but I refused. I said I was tired. I told Silas about this matter as well. There was a long silence on his end. Then he said, Poppy, if you're tired, just take a good rest for a while. He said he would fly over to see me, but I refused. I knew from his social circle how busy he was at that time. In the third year abroad, I began to achieve some success in another field. Owen also went abroad. I often ran into him, but he never took the initiative to approach me. The last time we met was in a coffee shop, and we greeted each other like old acquaintances. We didn't mention what had happened in the past. Only occasionally did he talk about Autumn, saying that she was now a music teacher in a primary school. I remembered that she had once said that she wanted to become an internationally renowned pianist in the future. Or maybe I remembered it wrong. I just replied politely, that's nice. After chatting for a few more sentences, he said, Poppy, the choice I made back then was truly unintentional. Do we really have to deny everything between us just because of that one thing? I smiled and said, Owen, it's all in the past. We should all start our different lives and not look back. When I mentioned this meeting with Owen during my phone call with Silas, he didn't say anything, which rather surprised me. When I first came abroad, once I accidentally shared with him that I had seen some handsome guys with blonde hair and blue eyes. Only then did I realize that Silas could be so jealous. He would compare himself in every aspect. However, later when I saw Silas showing up outside my villa in the middle of the night, I realized that I had overestimated him before. It was the first time we actually met in nearly 3 years. I couldn't help hugging him tightly, and he opened his jacket and wrapped me in his arms. I've missed you so much, Silas. He bought the plane ticket right after that phone call. He looked travel-worn and was extremely tired. He said he was so scared that I might fall for Owen's sweet talk and dump him, so he came to check to feel at ease. Poppy, I've never been greedy before, but now I am a little bit. I just want you to love only me. Silas was in a hurry. He accompanied me hastily for half a day and then flew back. In the 4th year abroad, I completed my studies. On an ordinary afternoon, Silas said on the phone, Poppy, come home. Let you meet a Silas who is worthy of you, a Silas who is excellent enough. The end.